What do you get when a London raised American South African and a New York raised Moroccan meet on the interwebs and become instant soul sisters? One of them, an Ayurvedic practitioner and transformation coach, and the other, a Conspire breathwork coach and Reiki master teacher. Both obsessed with wellness, family, entrepreneurship, relationships, and the magic of human expansion and growth. You get a whole convo. We truly believe that with an open heart, focused mind, and energy receptive to the possibilities, your wellness journey can guide you to a life that exceeds your wildest dreams. Welcome to our podcast. We're Ella and Iman, and we are so happy you're here. Come vibe with us as we explore the wholeness of being through the lens of wellness. Welcome to a whole convo with Ella and Iman and our first special, very, very, very special guest, Nikimbre Daniels. Can we just have a round of applause?
Oh my God, we need a serious round of applause. First of all, I'm like, I can't stop smiling.
I mean, I'm so excited. Yes, I'm so excited because there's so much for me personally to learn through this interview with you, Nikimbre, and for everybody else who's listening. So I'm going to hand over to you, Iman.
Yes, yes. I honestly cannot think of a better first guest to have on our podcast than Nikimbre because I mean, when I came back from the farm internship, which I'll go into in a moment of how we met, I was telling Ella and my husband and so many of my close friends about you, Nikimbre. I just had this really deep, genuine admiration and respect for you, and it really, really impacted my experience at the internship, having you there and having you as one of our teachers. So, obviously, I met Nikimbre during my internship on the Ayurvedic herbal farm at Banyan Botanicals in Williams, Oregon. And so, in addition to our farm work and our very labor intensive days, we had scheduled classes throughout the internship, and some were Ayurvedic related and some were not. And Nikimbre was our incredible instructor for a class called Plant Relations. And I remember when I saw that on the schedule, I was like, what's that mean? It was just so intriguing and there wasn't much detail, but literally as soon as the class started, meeting her, her energy when she started speaking in the class, I was just like, this is already my favorite class. This is already my favorite class. So I'm honored that you're here, Nikimbre. I really appreciate it. I'm so excited for us to dive in this episode. We're going to dive into what plant relations really means, how to start listening to plants, and how reconnecting with the living world can shift the way we heal, both individually and collectively. So, Nikimbre, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you so much for those sweet, kind words. I really appreciate that. And it means a lot because of the concept in itself being very not, and I don't even like to use the word normalized, but normalized in our society. Um, it means a lot to me when when students, reflect what they've learned from the class. It really warms my heart. So thank you so much, Iman. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, of course, of course. And really quickly before we dive in and get intimate and deep with you, I just wanted to give a quick bio just so our listeners have an idea. You are a naturalist and herbalist. You've been an instructor for several years with organizations such as the American Herbalist Guild, Herb Farm, Banyan Botanicals, obviously, where we met, Northern California Women's Herbal Symposium, and the Southern Oregon Land Conservancy. And your classes entail a very rich reminder of the gifts plants and land have to offer. So I know our listeners and our viewers are in for a treat. And let's get to it. Ella, I know you are like oozing over there with questions. So I'll let you start off.
No, it's like as you're talking, I'm like, there's just so much going on in my mind and so much I want to find out about you and your work, Nikimbre. And I just want to start. Let's start at the beginning about your story. Where did your connection to plants begin?
That is a question I get so often. And when I first started getting asked that question, I didn't really know how to answer it until I found a picture in my family home back in 2020. And the picture was of me and my great grandmother who, I grew up with on the land that I grew up on. And she was a very instrumental part of my childhood. And it's me and her. And I am holding wildflowers in one hand. And there's a chicken on my sweatshirt, and the chicken, I remember, like, you would like touch the beak and it would like squeak like a chicken. It
Wow.
was like my favorite sweatshirt. It was like, oh my gosh, I wore that thing I know,
It
all
was
the
your
time.
uniform.
It was definitely the uniform. And in the other hand, I had a naked baby doll. And I have been caring for children for over 20 years now in some capacity. And so that picture was a snapshot of me as a child. And when I saw that picture, it reminded me of who I am today as well.
Oh,
Still nurturing, caring, and yet, and also like working with the plant world. Um, and just involving myself in land and place. And I say all that to say that growing up in Northeast Texas on my great grandfather's property, which in turn became my grandmother's, my grandmother and my great grandmother lived they have a home on the property. My grandmother ended up taking care of my great grandmother. But before that, my great grandmother granted my mother and her two sisters parcels of the land. And so that is where I grew up for many years, running around, eating off fruit trees barefoot. And so that is where the story all began in a nutshell. Yeah.
As you're saying that, I feel so emotional, and I
yeah.
don't even know why, but I feel like it's the simplicity of your answer. You're saying I don't really know where it came from, but it's like you're speaking your
Mm,
soul. It's just there. That's the truth of
thank
it. The
you.
picture encapsulates it, but it just, whoo, I felt that. I really, really felt that.
Yeah,
So
me too. I got emotional too.
yeah,
And it's interesting you say that because it runs so deep within my bones. Oftentimes we leave self, and I don't necessarily think that that's a terrible thing to leave self and return back later in life, because there's so many lessons that we learn along the way. And
Mm.
I was humbled, and the humility of going back to my family's land was so big for me. I mean, I did that in 2020. I returned back to that land in 2020. And as you're getting emotional, I began to get emotional too, living back on that property. My family still has the land.
oh wow.
And so, yeah, yeah. And so, that's a really big part of who I am. And I'm so grateful and honored to have that story to tell, because I feel so grateful, because not every there are many who don't get to tell that story, right? That they grew up in that way or have their family's land still. And so I hold that as a prestigious honor, to be honest with you. Because, and it, again, anytime I have forgotten along the way of who I truly am, I return back to the memories of that. So, and that's a basis really of how I'm able to share this ancient wisdom of plant relations with others too.
Yeah, and I guess for me, hearing you say that as well, there's also a historical context that runs through it that's a bit
Uh-huh.
deeper.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's where some of the emotion for me is here, because I'm just like, wow, what an amazing testament to your family that the land is still with you and that it's been passed down through generations. So I want to take a moment to acknowledge and celebrate that just because I'm emotional. And thank you for sharing that, Nikimbre. Did you want to go next? Because I have so many questions, Iman.
Well, no, you keep asking your questions, but I do want to just quickly say before you ask your next one, Ella, that that is actually something that struck me immediately about Nikimbre when I met her. So obviously I met her the first day we had the plant relations class, and we had two during the time frame of that internship. And immediately she struck me as someone who doesn't only teach about plants and and their beautiful gifts that they have to offer, but she's someone that embodies that truth of what relationship with plant and relationship with the land really means. She is like the pure embodiment of it, and you can feel it. It is just all the instructors and teachers were next level, and I'm so grateful for that experience. And they offered us so much wisdom. But I will say that Nikimbre was the most present and most connected to the students and her wisdom, and it blew me away. And it's
Thank you.
obvious. And so it makes sense, that story. It's so deeply rooted in you, Nikimbre, and it's freaking beautiful to hear.
Thank you. Thank you. I've done many things along the years in between the time that I lived on my family's land growing up till now. And it's just made a full circle back to itself. And so I am so grateful beyond. Thank you so much. A big part of my essence is one thing I continue to maintain and try to uphold is walking in alignment, and being that example. We could talking is great, verbalizing, awesome. But I'd like to do a little bit more than verbalizing. There's a lot of chatter going on in our world. It's really loud right now, right? The drums are beating really, very loud. And instead of verbalizing the way in which I would like to show up in this world, I'd rather just stay the course in a very silent but loud way, if that makes sense. Like again, we're living in it's going to get louder. It's going to continue to get louder. And one of the best things that we can do is ground ourselves and remember who we are and not lose sight of that. And so again, one of the ways that has been helpful for me is working with the plants and the land, returning back to what I know. I don't have any degrees in anything. I always say I'm not an expert, but what I do know is that the land is calling us in many ways, and the plants as well.
Woo!
Girl,
I feel like
I told you. I
no,
told
but
you.
I feel like I should have had my box of tissues a little bit closer. So I think the next thing before we get further along is, what is plant relations?
Plant relations is a way in which we connect with the plants that is a symbiosis relationship. Um, when we look at relationships, one of the examples I kind of give at times is the way in which, like, you have a relationship with your mother or your father. What does that look like? What does that entail? And so taking that perspective and applying it to plants and land is ideally what it is. And again, looking at the symbiosis, the reciprocity is really big here when we talk about plant relations. And again, plants give us so much. They show up in places and spaces that fires have happened, or flooding has happened. They continue to still show up for us. And it's really important that it be a balanced relationship when it comes to plant relations and the way that we interact with them. And so that, in a nutshell, is what plant relations is. It's how is it balanced? Is it balanced? Are we gifting the plants and the land in the way that is positive and beautiful and organic,
And it's so important because as you were speaking there in terms of reciprocity, I think about my work with the breath particularly, and looking at how essential plants, trees in our world are to working with oxygen, to be able to sustain the support that we need to breathe, and the way that we just throw away as human beings without a thought, just not a second thought, driven by profit, driven by money, driven by what can I get, not one thought about what am I able to give back if I'm making this move. So
it helps what you're saying about the land becoming more important and understanding how we interact with it really sink in, because it's so easy to have such a short-term view as human beings. What am I getting? What am I getting? What can I
Yes.
do with this? And not actually considering, well, what do my children experience by this decision, and what do my children's children experience by taking this action? So I love that. I'm going to have to take a second in mine. I'm going to hand over to you because I just need to take a second to breathe. There's a lot going on for
Yeah,
me right now.
take
Yeah.
it all in.
I also want to say that when you talk about Ella, the breath, um, you know, plants give us life. It's very important that we remember that essence of it. It's very vital.
Mm,
Plant relations are very vital, very, very vital.
absolutely. And it's an evolution of our human consciousness to remember that, even though it's ancient, old wisdom that we've
Hmm.
somehow forgotten along the way. It's that coming back around to the remembering.
Yes.
Nikimbre, what would you, so, as a Ayurvedic practitioner, as someone who's always been fascinated and interested and diving deep into study with um, holistic medicine and herbalism, and not until recently, nature, really. And that's why one of the reasons I decided to do the internship. Most people, when they think about plants, they think herbal medicine, herbs, the thing that, like we're saying, like, what do they give us, right? What are they offering
Hmm.
us? How is plant relations different from knowing plant medicine or botany, for example?
That's a really great question. Um, I often share with folks that you don't necessarily need any education in building plant relations. This is a soul knowing. This
Mm.
is bottom line, a knowing within you, right? We've all had experiences where a plant has called our name. I'm pretty positive about that. Or not necessarily like verbalized calling our name, but has spoken to us or grabbed our attention in some way. And to me, that is an indication that that plant, that living being wants to connect with you. Um, it's a very intuitive aspect as well. I mean, the basis of plant relations to me, one of the basis is intuition. We as humans have gotten away from that. And that is something that we all have access to. It's just a matter of surrendering to that concept. And again, I don't think that there needs to be any kind of degree in botany or whatnot. I mean, botany is important and it has its place, of course. But with plant relations, it's you and the plant, and whatever the plant is trying to deliver to you is what needs to be recognized and looked at. And when it comes to plant relations, and plant relations doesn't have to look a certain way for everyone. It's going to look very different. But tapping into that intuition is like the main source of building those plant relations.
I love that. I remember when you first brought up intuition in our class and related it to that's the way we can begin to even understand or begin our relationship with plants, is to remember that it's an inner work thing and a soul connection, like you're saying, a very conscious choice that we make to create a relationship and a space between us, who we are as a spirit, and the plant as the living being that it is, versus just this thing. And that really struck me very deeply, Nikimbre, because intuition and connecting with my inner voice and my inner intelligence has been something that I've been really consciously working on and mastering and experimenting with for the last several years. And I actually had a very visceral moment a few years ago where I heard, like, I knew what the intuition felt like and sounded like, and I knew the times in which I ignored it. And I can look back and reflect back on those times that I ignored it So when you started sharing about intuition in relation to plants, it actually opened me up more to feel like, is this just a deepening of my intuition?
Mm.
Is this just
Mhm.
another level of
Mhm.
actually going inward? And when I started asking myself that question, that whole like me trying to define what plant relations is, and am I doing it right? And am I supposed to hear a voice? And
Yeah.
does a daisy sound like this? And does
Yeah.
does basil sound like like just
Yeah.
making the whole animation in my head? It started getting looser for me and a little bit more
Mm.
welcoming, that it's like, oh, it's me listening to me and connecting with another living being. And there's those inner voices in that spirit that already knows. And so that's when I started playing around with that. And I had so much fun, Nikimbre, in our class. We had one exercise, Ella, in our class, that was to go sit with a plant, any one of our choice that was calling to us, and sit in front of the plant and just, there was like a little guide of questions. One of them was to draw it, how we saw it. One of them was to just speak to it. And one of the things that I did, I just got this like intuitive hit to tell the plant, okay, I'm going to tell you a secret now, okay? And literally the voice that I heard back was, oh, I know all your secrets already.
You thought you were coming with something
Yeah.
new.
Yeah.
I swear I was cracking up and I was like giggling. And they're like, and later in the class, when we just, got back in the circle, I just couldn't stop laughing because one, it felt so beautiful and childlike, but it also felt very deep and
Mm.
serious. Like, oh, does the plant really know all my secrets? And then you think back, like, of course it does, because everything is everything, right? And we're all connected. So it was just
Yeah.
like this like beautiful epiphany that I had. It's just like the plants got my back. I got the plants
Yes.
back. We're like, she knows me. I know her. It was just such a beautiful exercise. And you just your classes, your exercises, your prompts are so beautiful, so powerful, and so unique. And
Yeah.
I'm just excited for the world to know them.
Thank you. Yeah, I tried to make them, the exercise is very simple because we spend so much time up here. And one of the things that I express in, class is and ask is for us to drop down from here into our heart space, into our heart center, because that's another aspect of building plant relationships is connecting through the heart space, and becoming childlike again, and experiencing plants and the lens of that. I think it's just a beautiful way to embark upon that journey. Um, yeah, and again, we just spend so much time here. It doesn't require, there's time and space for us to like utilize our brain. Our brain's very important, but we don't spend enough time in our heart space. And so I feel like now more than ever, also in the day and age that we're in, it's time that we return back to something that never takes a break. It's always working actively, um, can help us tap into a compassionate emotional state, um, and connect more with plants, you know.
And as you're saying that, Nikimbre, also it's like that feeling of expanding our humanity through
Mm,
this work, because being more connected in the heart, understanding that we're, like you say, it's not just what's going on between our ears. We are living, breathing, experiencing life in so many ways that we forget about. And I'm going to say, okay, I'm going to say it, it's like that male centric view of the world, because it
mhm,
is all
mhm.
about logic, what we can think, how we can explain our experience through logic. But we are so much more than that. And it just exciting.
Yes, and you brought up a really great word there, logic. We as humans think everything has to be we have to logistically figure it out. What
Mhm.
if we just tapped into our intuition, sat with the plants, and went to the plants and asked the plants, like, what is it that you want to share with me? What messages, what gifts do you have for me? What can I give to you? um, and stepping out of that logistical mindset, because as we can see, logistics can only get us so far.
Yeah.
In reality, I mean, that's just the reality of it. One of the things that I teach is opening the heart and tending to the heart. And I just would love to see a revolution in that.
Yeah.
And I know that may sound corny and quirky to some, but we have totally forgotten about that space. And I feel like we can really move mountains if we could return back to that space, because we've gotten so far, only so far with logistics and using our brain. um, and those are just my opinions on it. But yeah, I love working with the heart space in that way too. And just dropping down into that space, and and again, we talked about remembrance. Is really important here too, like remembering moments where we access that space or where we connected with plants when we were younger, that are very important as well.
Yeah, beautifully said, Nikimbre. For our listeners who are maybe this is like, whoa, like where do I even begin? Or it's fairly new concept. What practice can someone maybe start right now just to open up that dialogue, open up that relationship, that space of connection between us and our plant?
I would highly recommend just, you know, taking actively like walks perhaps throughout your day if you have the capacity to do that. Or maybe there's a plant outside your front door that you have maybe never sat with, perhaps sitting with that plant just for a few moments, maybe 5 to 10 minutes, or maybe if you only have a minute, just letting that plant know that you see that plant, that you recognize it. I think that's like the first step that one could take. Or perhaps going to the nursery and picking up a plant that calls to you and begin to nurture that plant, once purchased, and watching that plant come into full flourishing. I mean, that's one of the most beautiful things also about building plant relations. It's I often have done that, gone to a nursery and picked up a plant, a plant that I've either worked with or was calling to me, and just began to build that root. Because with relationships, it's all about nurturing, and it's such a beautiful experience if you've never done that before, to watch it just come into full bloom. It's a beautiful way to
Literally and figuratively.
literally and
And one of the things that's beautiful about you saying that as well is we do live in a world that has a tendency to want to move really quickly. And so that gives us an opportunity to create a longer term relationship, a longer term dynamic and experience to explore ourselves and our community with the plants that we are nurturing and tending to. And is this kind of, because I'm intrigued by what made you want to share this, or how did you decide to share this work with
Yeah,
the
how did you
world?
come back full circle to that little Nikimbre with the naked baby doll and her wildflower?
And don't forget the chicken sweatshirt.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the chicken scratch.
it was and actually it was a rooster. Now that I think about it, I believe it
Oh.
was a rooster. It was a rooster, Mr. Rooster.
Hmm.
It's interesting you asked that as well. I dabbled in herb school for a bit, in 20, I think it was 2016. And in 2019, 2020, I returned back to my family's land after a spiritual calling, which was spirit letting me know that it was time to return home. And at the time, I thought, what do you mean I'm going back to my hometown? I haven't lived there in 20 years. Like, that sounds so foreign to me. What do you mean? Like, like not for a visit, but to live there. And so I did. I tapped in really intimately with that, and I returned back there. And it was then that I began to really get quiet. And as we know, things were getting really ramped up at that time. And there was a lot of confusion happening. And what I did was I returned back to that land. And for about a year living there, I would spend time with family and friends. Well, family more, because I hadn't lived there in 20 years. So there was no friendships with humans that I had there. And so what happened was I began to connect with the plants on my family's land. In that moment, I realized that I was not alone. Because going back to a place after 20 years, it can feel lonely. You can feel
Yeah.
detached from what you knew. And the plants showed up for me in a way that I am so grateful for. It was from that moment that I didn't feel alone. I began to hear their voices, but a lot of that was the practice of sitting in the woods alone. And
Mm.
so that's why, in the class that I teach about plant relations, I have students sit with the plants because so much can come through when we do that. I mean, for that first year, that's a lot of what I did was just go outside first thing in the morning with my chai or coffee, and I would just sit and listen. I would listen to the birdscape. I would listen to the rustle of the trees and the pine and the leaves in the pine trees, or um, I would just watch plants in their different stages, of life. And it was so beautiful. And it was also then that I began to write. And I remember the notebooks, and I still have them, where I started to write plant relations. What does that mean? What is it that I want to share with others? And, again, this is ancient, ancient, ancient wisdom.
Yeah.
But I feel like spirit put it on my soul to share with others. And so these downloads began to happen. And it was a little overwhelming at first, I will admit. But I've learned to adjust and breathe into those messages and put them where they need to be and deliver them when they need to be delivered.
Mm.
And that first year of 2020, I know for some 2020 was a lot. It was a very challenging year. And for me, it was a very growing yet there was a lot of growth that happened. There was a lot of embarkment that happened. A lot of transformation for inside of me happened. And it began in 2020, and I just began writing and writing and writing. And it wasn't until like a couple years later that I began to share this information. And I wrote all of the material thinking I need to get this out of my head and onto
Yeah.
paper. How it just takes up space in there, and you need to get it somewhere. And so that is what happened. I just put it on paper, and then before I knew it, it was asked to teach this wisdom. And so that's how it started.
Incredible.
In perfect alignment, as you mentioned way back at the beginning there.
Perfect alignment.
Yes, yes. And that's something, I love watching happen. We as humans try to control so much. And, I share in my classes too that organic, that word organic is very potent medicine within the scope of what I teach as well, because you cannot force a relationship with anyone, but yet a plant, because when we force the relationships and we don't receive what the plant is really asking, wanting to share with us or asking for us to share with others, because that's another aspect of plant relations too. It's the plants can deliver many different messages to us for us to share, with others as well. Um, yeah, the organic is really important here.
Yeah.
And I love the reflection that keeps coming out in your words between we could just think that it applies to plants and nature, but the reflection in our human experience as well. I want to ask you, you talk a lot about the plants as in being outside. How much of this can we bring inside to our house plants
Mm.
and our interaction with indoor spaces if we don't have as much access to land and being outside?
Yeah, I have students that will share with me intimately that, they live in an urban environment and they don't have access to greenery. And I really appreciate it when students share that with me, because then it gets my wheels turning of um, what about the times and spaces where I'm traveling or I'm not around greenery? I mean, that it's for me is a challenge that I have had to adjust to, because I'm so used to living in a wooded space on land. I mean, it's been my life up until this point, honestly. Um, One of the things I recommend is perhaps you can communicate with your houseplants too in just the same way. if you have houseplants, or perhaps, like I said, going to the nursery and picking out an herb that has been calling to you, or a plant in that way, and beginning to nurture that relationship, putting on your windowsill or next to your nightstand. And you can build relationships in that way too. I also recommend sleeping with plants. It's a
Ooh,
concept
hold on
that
a minute. That sounds scandalous.
Juicy.
What are you saying? You heard it here first. It's exclusive.
Yeah. I joke, for the last few years I have been sleeping with plants and plants and books. And so we've become very intimate in that way. And if, for example, I have a really connected relationship with cedar, and so I have taken cedar clippings and put them underneath my pillow. Or I've worked with rue in an intimate way with, placing it at the bottom of my feet for protection or whatnot. And so that's another great way, if you don't have, greenery around you on the outdoors, bringing those clippings or whatever, and into the home and working with them in that way. That's a really beautiful way, because then we talk about the dream state and how plants can work with us in that way. And so yeah, that's a really great way to work with them in that way too.
I just want to underline, you didn't say just into your home, you said into your bed.
Into your bed. Might be a little pokey, but you'll be fine.
Yeah, depending on which plant we're working with,
Right.
we got to be careful.
And how intimate we want to get.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
Because a lot of, when we do like room cleanses and things like that, it's made up of plants and dried herbs and flowers, which are more intimately used, but we'll let people use their imagination on that one. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, of course. And also, drinking herbal tea. I think that herbal tea does not get enough credit.
Yeah.
I think that it's not, there's so much potent medicine when it comes to herbal tea. And especially when you are making your own herbal blends, going out and wildcrafting, foraging your own plants, or perhaps someone in your life has called you over and asked you, which has happened to me multiple times, hey Nikimbre, I have this plant, would you be interested in harvesting it? And then sitting with the thought of that, connecting with your higher self and spirit, if it's in right alignment, what is that person's practice when it comes to growing plants and whatnot, and then bringing those plants into your home and crafting an herbal tea is a really wonderful way to connect with plants, or going to your local apothecary and picking up plants in that way too.
So, and that's a way we can keep it on the fly as well, taking those blends with us, traveling and so on.
Yes. And while you're blending those teas, talk to those plants that are in there. Ask those plants, what is it that you're willing to, to give me as a gift? And again, going back to reciprocity and thanking the plants, it's highly, highly, highly important in this work.
Oh, beautiful. Magic right there. Magic talk. I love it. What do you think, if any, that you've been thinking about lately is a possible misconception maybe that people have about plants that you'd love to correct?
Oh, that's a really great question as well. I think a really big misconception, and this goes to conservation work as well, because I've been diving super deep into conservation work and showing up in those communities as well. A misconception is that the bigger the company, the better the plant material. I don't necessarily think that's correct. And we have to be mindful of who we are sourcing from. These conversations happen, but I think they need to happen more as we go on, because Western herbalism is becoming very, very popular, as we can see. It's all over Instagram, it's all over Pinterest, it's everywhere, and there's recipes everywhere, and information. And it's really important that we be mindful of the practices of these companies that we are working with. Who's working for them? How much are they getting paid? What's the climate like? How much of the material are they harvesting? I think that's something that we need to be mindful of in our society.
It's a great point. I'm glad you brought that up, Nikimbre. I agree.
I'd like to ask if you could say in a nutshell, what ways does bringing plant relations and understanding, enhancing our understanding of plant relations, help to enrich our lives day to day? So, I'm a person doesn't really know about plants, hasn't really got much connection. How am I going to be attracted to this, or not even attracted, it's not the right way to put it, but how will it help me in my day to day life?
Beautiful question.
That is a very beautiful question. I think from a personal, because, a lot of this is from a personal perspective for me. I'm someone that spends a lot of time alone. And the plants have helped me in a way, again, feel less alone in many, many, many ways. And they have delivered information to me in ways that it may be like things I needed to process or things of that nature just by watching, maybe even like just observing the plant. And I think for the average person, I think it takes time. I think it takes time to tap into plant relations. I think that it truly is a plant calling you in. I think it takes that. I think it takes curiosity. Oftentimes, what will happen with my students is I will deliver the message, I like to call it. And then from there, I might get an email or 2 weeks later, Nikimbre, oh my gosh, I was thinking about the material that you provided in class, and it got me thinking, wheels start turning. I think that's what it takes. I think it takes one's wheels to start turning and thinking about, well, what is my relationship with plants? Do I have any plants in my home? Have I connected with a plant before? I remember when I have so many students tell me, I remember when I was a child and I first met lavender, and my parents told me this, that, and the third. I mean, it's opening Pandora's box in many ways. And so I think that it takes curiosity. I think it depends on the person's, state of curiosity. Like, where are you with your curiosity? Do you get curious in life?
I love
Say
that, and
it, girl, say it, please.
I love that, and I also, you know, it's when you were talking about the downloads that you were getting and writing things down, and it felt like you were being the conduit for all this information coming through. It it's a reminder to me and an invitation to all of us who have this intuition, who have this guidance about the unique way we see things, or the unique way that life interacts with us, to make it available, because sometimes that curiosity can be stoked if we have a slight introduction, even if I don't understand it. So for me, it's like, what is plant relations? It was in knowing that it existed, even though I didn't know what it was, that curiosity can grow and develop. And it's a beautiful thing that you have this within you, and you're able to bring it out. And that's why I'm so excited that you're here, and then more people get to hear your message, your experience, and your wisdom, your teachings that you have to share on this.
Thank you. Yeah, it's really something that I did not know that I would be sharing with with others. It came by way of me returning back to my family's land, tapping. I mean, before that, I was working with plants. I was working at a food co-op with a room full of over 150 herbs. The herbs were speaking then. Taking herbal classes or working with the American Herbalist Guild, and I was in the world of plants. But it was not until I returned back to my family's land that it just took off, and there was this remembrance. And that's something that's really important to remember too, is that this is all remembrance. We all have connections to plants. It's just remembering. It's merely impossible for one to think that they don't have any connection to nature. That's impossible. We are nature. So it's just a matter of remembrance, tapping into our intuition, which is another, another big concept in this, and just organically building from there. It doesn't have to be anything grandiose. And again, reciprocity. Even if you start with just reciprocity when it comes to building plant relationships, gifting the plant, even for its life force, because it is giving us life. Even if we start just there, we can move mountains. I truly, truly, truly believe that. We may not be able, the earth is going to take care of herself. But what if we gifted the plants, the trees, the shrubs, the birds, the bees? Like, what if we just started gifting them without hesitation, without wanting anything back? What would a world like that look like?
No.
What would it do for our souls as well?
And is this part of what drives your vision for humanity in sharing this work?
It does. It really truly does. I have been highly moved in the last few years, and I've done a lot of observing which is a lot of the reason why you really can't find much on me on the internet.
By the way, speaking of not being able to find you and you having no online presence, the first thing Emma asked me before we started is she said, wait, how did she agree to doing this podcast with us? I'm like, ask her that question yourself.
We're going to put a pin in that. We'll come back to that.
But yes, I have been truly moved by just observing what's going on, sitting in nature, collecting downloads and working from there. And I have to tell you that this for me is a soul divine mission. And that's it.
I just got chills.
And I'm just being completely transparent and honest. Yeah. That is where it lands. And I told, my higher self and spirit that I was going to embark on this journey, and I want to uphold to that because, again, it is part of that divine mission. And I've been, diving super deep into conservation work lately too, which is really important. It's now go time. It's now time to step into those roles. And show up on these lands that need us more than ever now.
Beautiful. Well,
and that's another great way of building plant relations too, is doing conservation work and working with the plants. Then land trust or organizations like that.
Yes.
It's so true. And I feel like, when you say it's your soul mission, there is a gravity to that. And I think that's why I felt it so strongly. And I've been feeling your words so strongly because it, like you said, it comes from you. It comes from, there's no filtering it out through the logical brain or the logical, how should I do this? Or what should this look like? It just is because it is. And
right.
It's moving through you.
Right.
Yeah, it just hits different. It just hits different.
And often students will say, like, how do you know? And as you said, Ella, it moves through you. It's undenying. You cannot deny the movement. It's there. It's present. What are you going to do with it?
Ooh, girl.
What you gonna do? Oh my God. What?
Well, then I have to ask now. I have to. What made you say yes to doing this? Because you are, as we said earlier, a woman of mystery.
So it was during class that Iman asked me if I would. And because of the flow of our class and together and her personality and just already feeling she was one in the class that I knew was picking up what I was putting down. And she was also very curious too. And so I couldn't say no. I felt like I felt like it would be a super good fit, in having Convo. So yeah.
So do you know what she said to me? She said, she met me.
I mean, well, yes, she is correct.
I am so honored. I swear, this is gonna light me up for the rest of the day, for the rest of the month. Like, this is just, this has been such a beautiful, deepening, incredible conversation, Nikimbre. Thank you so much for reminding us that plants are not just background scenery or the things we take for our, like, joints, but active participants, in our lives. And what I love so much about your work, Nikimbre, is that the way you teach plant relations is not just about knowing what a plant does for you, but really remembering, like you said. I love that you use that word remembrance, and you remind us that that's really what life is about, is remembering. Just about remembering that plants are kin, they're teachers, they're our companion, in this journey of life. So for everyone listening, I mean, you've heard this convo. You don't need a degree, you don't require a big herbal library or a garden to even start. It's just about awareness, acknowledging, noticing the plant around you, the tree outside, or even greeting the herbs in your spice cabinet with a little bit more curiosity. So I'm so honored that you are here. For those who want to connect with Nikimbre, you would be a fool not to want to connect with her. We are going to give you the exclusive email because
it's not out there.
This is limited edition, okay? On nikimbre.daniels@gmail.com. We are going to include it in the show notes. She has an incredible monthly newsletter. Email her if you're interested in joining her mailing list. She has incredible offers every single month. Her classes on intuition and tapping into heart space and herbalism and all the things that you heard her say are absolutely phenomenal. So I'm excited for everyone to connect with you personally and directly. And I love that little touch that the only way they can connect with you is they got to email you.
For now.
Convo.
Yes, for now. I am working on another project, and there is a landing page for the project. So that has not launched yet.
Okay, landing page.
So this is another exclusive. Exclusive info.
You heard it first. You heard it first at a whole convo.
She's coming out.
Love it. So have you got a timeline on that, or should people stay tuned? Join the mailing list to find out.
Yes, if you join the mailing list within the next few weeks, actually, I would say within the next week, the landing page will be up and happening. So yes, if you join the mailing list, you'll get all of that information and more.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Nikimbre.
You.
I adore you. I love you.
Thank
and I'm
you.
so grateful that we met.
So grateful too. Same. So grateful.
I'm so grateful that you met, because I love and adore you too.
Thank you, Ella. You two have lit up my Saturday morning. Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, honestly. Thank you.
Thank you so much. This is a whole convo with Ella and Iman, and we can't wait to talk to you next time.
Until next time.
That is a wrap on this week's Convo. We had a blast talking to you.
Thank you for sharing your time, hearts, and minds with us.
We hope this episode left you thinking, feeling, and maybe even breathing a little deeper. If it moved something in you, please share it, text it to a friend, or just sit with it.
Remember, the power of change can start with the simplest convo.
And if you have any comments or thoughts you'd like to share with us, please feel free to do so. We'd love to connect with you. Don't forget to subscribe to our show so you never miss a moment of the magic. And if you're curious about any of our services and offerings, check out the show notes for all the links and goodies. We're so grateful you're on this journey with us. Until next time,
stay rooted, stay whole.